Hi guys, and welcome to my second Flosstube video, where I'd like to say a huge thank you for your wonderful welcome and to do a WIP parade. My name is Hannah and this is Handmade. So first off, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody who watched my first Flosstube video. There were so many wonderful comments and all the likes and subscribes. It was amazing. I know this is such a wonderful community. Everybody's been so nice on Instagram, and I'm just so touched that that continued to my first Flosstube video. And especially that you kindly overlooked the technical issues and other issues in the video. I wasn't feeling particularly well. My hair, let's just not even talk about what happened to that. And my camera kept cutting out, but hopefully we'll get this sorted for this time. Thank you so much for overlooking all of that and concentrating on the stitching, which is what we're all here for. What actually surprised me was that I even took a video at all. When I was little, took lessons with a music school. I played lots of instruments, predominantly saxophone and guitar, and I was part of lots of groups, and every term we'd work towards the concert, and you'd do solo performances and group performances, and I hated being photographed and videoed. My dad would have to bring me into the concert, sneak back out to the car to grab the camera and sneak it back into the audience to be able to film me if I knew that he had a camera. No. And even now I really don't like having my photo taken. So the fact that I volunteered to take a video of myself, yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, but it's just so nice to be able to share my passion with other people that understand it and are interested. So thank you, and I hope to carry on making more of these videos. So quite a few of you commented on my grandma and her vital role in introducing me to needlework. And my grandma, she's a wonderful lady. She's 84 now and she still does cross stitch. She does more knitting though, because I think her it just gets harder to see, doesn't it? But we talk about it every time we talk on the phone. She asks me what I'm working on and I ask her what she's working on. And recently over the summer when we met, I was showing her pictures on my Instagram, and she actually said that she rues the day that she introduced me to stitching because I have long since surpassed her. So I think she was joking, but yeah, there we have it. And quite a few of you picked up on the fact that I have a British accent. I was supposed to introduce myself last video and I did a pretty poor job. I think I mentioned my name and that was about it. So yeah, I live in Britain. I live in England in the southeast. I live in a town called Maidenhead, which is just outside of London. If you start from central London and go west, then once you just get outside of the reaches of outer London, that's pretty much it. It's really close to Heathrow, and I've lived here almost all of my life. I moved here when I was 2. So today I'd like to do a WIP parade. There are quite a few of you who asked for that in the comments and I'm happy to oblige. I do have quite a few WIPs though, so I'm going to try and get through these as quickly as I can so that the video doesn't end up taking all day. And I thought I would start with my most recent start first, and here it is. This is Orange River by Zolotoe Runo, which, if you remember, is the same company as produced the Leonard Afremov kit that I'm also working on. And I love this design. So I picked this design because while I was at university one summer, I went for 6 weeks to Tanzania and volunteered in schools there, we basically recycled textbooks from UK schools and took them out to Tanzanian schools, because in secondary school over there they learn in English and they just don't have access to the same resources, and you know, physics and maths and whatever, they're the same the world around. And whilst we were there, we did all sorts of marvellous things. We went to Zanzibar, we went on a safari. It was just an incredible experience. And as soon as I got home, I knew that I wanted to stitch something to remember it by. But I just couldn't find something. I mean, I originally thought that I'd do something safari themed, but I just couldn't find anything that really, I just knew that it was the one that I saw it and I thought, yeah, that's definitely it. I didn't see that. And I'd see all you guys on Flosstube showing your Jane Netley Mayhews, and I'd be thinking, maybe. And then I forget how, but I stumbled across this one, probably looking for more Leonard Afrimoff kits, if I'm honest. And I saw this, and I knew. I saw it, and I thought, oh, that is what I want to do to remember my trip. And so I bought it, not looking at all at how big it was or anything like that. I just bought it. But the fact that it's in 4 panels, it's a quadriptych, I've never seen that. Normally you see the triptychs, and I just thought it was so clever and the colours were gorgeous. And I liked it so much that when I saw the second one in the same style, I had to get that as well. And that's this one, Evening Africa. So it's very similar, as you can see, but I've not started that one yet. So back to Orange River, I only started this a couple of weeks ago, and it's come together really quickly. But there's a bit of a problem. I didn't realise how big it was when I bought it, and this is my biggest frame. It's 30 inches, and the fabric for this is so big that I have to work it sideways, so that should give you a bit of a hint to start with. And here's where I've got to so far. Excuse all of the hanging threads. It's coming together really quickly, and this is almost, I think I've got up to about there to finish the first panel, so it's coming together so quickly. But let me just show you the full size. Okay, so I'm probably gonna have to stand up for this. So you know how Zweigart fabrics are famous for their orange band? So this is one side, one selve edge of the fabric. And then we go all the way across. And look, we've got the other selve edge. So this is absolutely huge. And goodness knows how I'm going to frame it. I haven't got a clue, or how expensive it's going to be. But there we are. That's where I'm up to on Orange River by Zolotoe Runo. Oh, and I'd just like to mention that the kit doesn't say exactly, but this is obviously a Zweigart fabric from the orange band, and it's got a it's a printed fabric. I don't know if you can quite see. So I think it's the Vintage Country Cream 14 count Aida. And the coverage isn't amazing. The threads that they provide are Madeira, and they just don't seem to give us good coverage, especially for the dark colours. But because it is so big and needs so much fabric, I didn't have anything else. So I was too impatient to start, and I just decided to go with it. So if I just show you a close-up of the coverage. Can you see? It's a bit difficult. It doesn't actually look too bad here. When I take the photographs, if you visit my Instagram, you can see that the fabric really does come through in the photos. but it's not too bad actually in real life, or indeed on video. So I'm happy with it. I'm really looking forward to finishing this panel, and then I think I'm going to need to switch out because I've worked on this solidly since I started it. So my second most recent start is this. It's Starlet II from Maia. And this is a kit that Mum saw at one of the craft shows that we went to, and she asked me if I'd stitch it for her. And I said yes, of course. And she brought it home and put it in a drawer, and we both forgot about it for several years. It was only when we were cleaning out the drawer that we remembered anything about it. And so I decided one day in July, at the end of July, I decided I'd start this. So this is how far I got. And you'll see that it's really not very far at all. And I think I've got no problem with working on black. In fact, I seem to get withdrawal if I'm not working on a project with dark fabric often enough. I just love how the colours completely pop when they're on dark fabrics. And dark fabrics don't give me any issues when I'm stitching on them. But I think it's to do with the fabric, and I think it's that it's a bit stiff. So I put it down pretty quickly. So I think what I'm going to do is give it a bit of a soak and see if that will remove some of the sizing from the fabric and maybe make it just a little bit nicer to work on. I don't think Mum even knows that I've started this one for her, and there's certainly no deadline, so there's no pressure there. And I do like it. I think it's a nice design. I can't really put my finger on it why I didn't really enjoy working on it. So this next start I started the day before I started the Starlet, and this is Mirabilia, Siren and the Shipwreck. And I said last video how Mrs. Milky Bar Kid and all of you guys on Flosstube introduced me to Mirabilias, and I've stitched several since. So this is one of two that I've got currently going at the moment. And let me show you where I've got up to. I'm working on the called for fabric. I bought it as a kit and it came with the called for fabric. It's 32 count Sea Lily linen. Say that 3 times quickly. From Wichelt. And this is where I'm up to. You can see I got quite far on her. I don't really know why I put her down. I don't know, I like to have a lot of variety, so I usually switch quite often between my WIPs. But here she is. She's got several silks, at least 2 silks, Karen water lilies in her. So here she is. I did the back stitching on her face just because it was freaking me out a little bit to see her without it. And then I've got the chandelier all done apart from the beads. I've got her hair mostly finished. I think there's a few more flowers and things trailing off from there. And I've made great progress down her tail. But so I think that I was working in vertical stripes of colour. So I started off on the right doing the blue silk. And then I did the bright turquoise and then the pale colours, and then got the silk here, and so I've come back to the navy and I need to work that down the column. But I obviously needed a bit of a break from the blue, so I decided to start doing her fin over here, and then when I got sick of the sort of greens I came back, and so I switch quite often between areas that I'm working. There we are, that's my current progress on Siren and the Shipwreck. And I have quite a thing for mermaids. I do really enjoy stitching them. So I can't wait to add her to my finished collection. So I was obviously going through a bit of a starting phase at the end of July, because the day before I started Siren and the Shipwreck, I started this one, which is Seafarers Globe by Maria Diaz. It's this lovely oldie worldy style map with mythology. So you've got Poseidon and the mermaids and the sea monster in there. And it's from Cross Stitcher issue 187. So this is one of the magazines that I had the subscription to. I don't actually like working from magazines because all the pages and everything. So what I do is I either take photos or scan in the charts and then work off my phone, which I find a lot easier, and then I can merge pages together when there's a break, so that I don't have to work out the cross page, flipping the pages back and forth. So here we are, this is Seafarer's Globe. It's on 28 count Ivory Cashel by Zweigart, 2/2. And I'm using all the called for DMC, but I've substituted the metallics. I'm using a Krynek number 4, one of the golds, I can't remember which one, maybe 002. So you can see when I do my stitching, I tend to leave lots of parked threads dangling around. So I'll do the cross stitch, and then I've been trying not only back stitching as you go with this project, but also back stitching over more than one block. So I've been doing back stitching over 2 blocks on here to see if it would produce a smoother outline, and I've been really pleased. Like, you can't tell the difference. It probably, if I hadn't have said, you wouldn't have known. So if I try and give you a close-up of this girl over here, she is done with back stitching over 2 blocks, and it does seem to give a slightly smoother outline, but you can't tell that it's done over 2. And the additional benefit, of course, is that if you're back stitching over 2, you do half the number of stitches, so it takes you half the amount of time. So there's one last thing I'd like to say about this one, and it's that the writing there, you see the Seafarer's Globe. I'd like to try, I mean, it's currently done in back stitch, but I'd like to try actually ripping it out and doing it in couching to see if that gives it a more smooth ink-like effect, given that it's calligraphy and handwriting. But I haven't got around to that bit yet. So this next project has been really popular on Instagram, and I can't say I blame you guys, because she is absolutely beautiful. I saw her, fell in love, had to get her, got her as an early birthday present to myself. Started her before my birthday, which was a bit naughty. So I started her at the end of May, and who am I talking about? I am talking about her. This is Red Mermaid by RTO. She's a gorgeous kit. So RTO, I didn't realise, is an Estonian company, and this is a charting of artwork by someone whose name I'm absolutely going to butcher, but I'm going to give it a go. It's Viktor Nizopsev. I think that's right. And he does lots of, he does oil paintings, I think, of this kind of fantasy design. He's got loads and loads and loads of mermaids. But this is the only one of his that I've seen charted as a cross stitch. And she's absolutely beautiful. So she's done on 14 count navy aida, and with DMC cottons, and with some metallics. And this is where I've got to on her. She's absolutely stunning. So the one thing that I would say about RTO kits is they don't seem to be very generous with their fabric. If you see up here, I've had to sew on additional aida, just a scrap piece that I had, to be able to even stitch this with the frame. There's only about 1.5 inches here, so not much room at all if you're working with a frame. But yeah, oh, I've got the needle left in there. I absolutely adore her. She's possibly one of my favourite WIPs, if not my favourite WIP. I don't know, I've got so many, I like them all. Otherwise I wouldn't be bothering to work on them. But yeah, oh, I absolutely love her. But the problem is I came to a bit of a stall on her, and it's because most of her tail down here is in half stitch, and it's so difficult to secure the threads, as it's one strand half stitch, that I'm having to figure out where the full crosses are and do those first, so that then I've got somewhere to anchor the half stitch threads. Let's see if I can just bring her in a bit closer for you. Look at that hair. Oh, just look at it. I mean, there's some back stitching to do up there, and there's still a few bits to fill in. And there's some more, no, the other side. There's more work to do in the, in the background behind her. But yeah, there we are. Isn't she wonderful? So I actually started off, and you may have seen in the early photos on Instagram, I started off gridding in her hair, and I very rarely do that. But it helped me just to get started because there were so many different colours, similar colours in there, in small areas, so there was a lot of counting between them. And I hadn't worked out a good system for moving between the blocks because I wanted to secure the ends. I didn't want to risk parking because it's a kit, so I didn't want to run out, even though it's DMC, so I could probably have colour matched, but if it was a different dye lot, etc, etc, etc. So I wanted to be as economical with the threads as I possibly could. But before too long, I'd figured out my system, and so I stopped gridding, and I'm not sure that it would have helped that much, but perhaps it would help more down here. I'm not sure, but I'm generally reluctant to do it because it takes up time. It probably, you know, it saves time if you struggle with counting, and I might have to think about it for down here. But most of the time I can get away with just working small areas, you know, sort of row by row. And there's one thing of interest in this project that I don't often see, and that's the fractional stitches, so the 3/4 and the, well, 3/4 stitches. So in this chart, the instructions specifically say, when you have 2 symbols in one square, you do 2 3/4 stitches, 1 for each symbol, and you do the long leg, the half stitch, before you do the quarter stitch. So I don't think I can get close up enough to show you. Give it a go. But around her nose and mouth, I hope this is going to focus, there's quite a few double 3/4 stitches. And I don't tend to do my fractional stitches like that. I tend to do 1/4 and then 1 3/4, and the 3/4 being the one, the colours in the foreground. Unless there's a diagonal back stitch across them, in which case I just do 2/4, and then the back stitch forms the other leg, the top leg. So yeah, it's been really quite interesting to do. A little bit of a challenge because it's on Aida to do the fractional stitches, but there aren't too many. Can you tell she's my favourite? I just can't put her down. I just want to keep looking at her. Okay. So the WIP I started before that one was this. Mirabilia Deco Spirits. Now I bought this as soon as I'd finished that first Mirabilia Circlet Friends that I showed last week. As I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic, the Deco. I just love Nouveau and Deco. And I hadn't really seen many people stitching it. So I've seen more people stitching it now. And it's great, it's a beautiful design. So let me show you where I got to. And it's not very far at all. So here it is. This is it. So I think this is the beginning of Fire? Yeah, I think it's the beginning of Fire. And really quickly, I ran across a problem with this. This is on 32 count white Zweigart Belfast. The chart calls for Krynic number 8 braid. And I didn't know any better when I bought this. It was only my second Mirabilia. I'd only used Krynic number 4 on Circle of Friends. So I had no idea what the number 8 and the number 4 meant. And so now I'm in a big quandary with this project because the number 8 just feels far too thick to use on 32 count, and it's making it stand proud, and it's just not enjoyable. But this project calls for 5 spools of 9294 and 4 spools of 014, so I have got all of this number 8 braid that I've already bought for this project. And I can't decide what to do. Do I carry on with the number 8 braid? But I'm not enjoying it, and I'm only a tiny way into the project, and there is so much of this that I don't think I'm going to work on it because I'm not going to enjoy it. On the other hand, I've already got all of it, and I'm loath to buy more because I've already got the number 8 braid. I'm loath to buy the number 4, except I'm not going to finish it unless I do. So I'm having to be a bit budget conscious at the moment, so I've basically just put this one to the side whilst I dither over what exactly I'm going to do with it. But it's such a shame because it's a beautiful project, and if it was on 28 count, it would probably be fine. I think number 8 is doable on 28 count. I've done that before. I can't think on what project, but I'm pretty sure I've used it. Oh, probably the Victoria Sampler stuff. That's 28 count Quaker cloth. Those 4 elements projects that I showed last time. But I really don't like it on 32 count. Anyone else that has stitched this, please let me know what you've done, what you thought, what you felt about the number 8 braid conundrum. I mean, one thing that I did think was when I'd finished this, if I switched to the number 4 braids, then I could sell the number 8 braids with the pattern, because someone else might want to stitch it on 28 count, say, and the number 8 braids are perfectly, or should be, perfectly good to stitch that. So I could get around it that way. But yes, suggestions and comments please on what I should do with this, and if you've had similar experiences. Oh, and I started this at the end of April, the 22nd of April. So the next WIP I started on the 7th of April, and it's Papillon Creations, How Does Your Garden Grow? So this was a free sale that Papillon Creations put on, but unfortunately I don't think it's available on their website anymore. So I don't remember when I got it, quite a long time ago, I think. But I was prompted to start it because I saw someone else on Instagram was posting their project, and I'd done a Papillon Creations small freebie, and really enjoyed it because it had specialty stitches and you got to choose your own colour palette. So that seeing their project on Instagram prompted me to go and look through my Papillon Creations collection and see what I had, and so I pulled this one out and picked my own colours and started posting it on Instagram, and the person whose project I'd seen said, "Oh, I've just been working on that," and it hadn't clicked. I hadn't realised that it was the same project, which is just stupid really. But anyway, so how I chose the colours on this, it's on 32 count light Mocha Belfast linen by Zweigart, and my thinking when I was doing this, selecting the colours, was that I wanted to use up, Grandma, I think it was from Grandma, had given me a selection of antique Anchor and DMC threads. I say antique, I mean they're so odd that the labels are different, the numbering seems to be different. So I thought I'd try and use those up. But I ended up having to reach a bit of a compromise because I couldn't quite pick the palette that I wanted just from those threads, so I had to pull in some DMC as well from my stash. Yeah, I really enjoy it because it's full of specialty stitches, and I wanted a sort of bright, colourful garden. So there we go. And it's scandalous really that I haven't finished it, because all there is left is basically to do the repeat of this top border motif. It's kind of symmetrical, so I've just got to do some more vases with the arch and in the centre square. But I don't know, it's one of those, I'm not sure about the yellow is why I've not finished it. I can't decide if the yellow is too pale compared to the rest of the quite vibrant darker colours. I don't know if it's a bit insipid. So I've got to do this, and then I've also got to pick a colour of beads and do the beading on that. So the next project is one I started on the 12th of March, and it is Anchor Design Studios Hedgerow. Now I'm doing the version this side here, this green version. And so what it is, it's a bit difficult to see. The picture's not that great, but it's a hardanger piece and specialty stitches. And it uses the variegated pearl cottons that Anchor produce, and stranded cottons, and metallics to do the hardanger and the woven bars and filling stitches, which I thought was really interesting. I saw it, I have a search alert for hardanger on eBay, and I saw this come up, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. It never occurred to me that you could do your needle weaving, the woven bars and the filling stitches in metallics. I mean, it seems really obvious now, but that didn't occur to me. And I already had, because my local needlework store is a big box craft store. It's called Hobbycraft, and they do the basics of DMC stranded cottons and the Anchor stranded cottons, and they do quite a lot of number 5 pearl cottons and Anchor, including these variegated ones. So on my various trips, I mean, that's about it. They do some kits as well, and a bit of fabric, but not much. There's not a huge range. Certainly not for someone that wants, like me, that wants to try new and interesting things on different fabrics and with different materials. But on one of my many trips to Hobbycraft, I had seen these pearl cottons, and it was when I was first getting into hardanger, and thought it was all done on 22 count in pearl 5 and pearl 8. So I saw these variegated colours, and I just thought, oh, pretty. So I'd built up a bit of a collection of them, and I happened to have the pearl 5 variegated cottons that you need for this design. So I thought, perfect. So here it is. Here's where I've got to so far, and it's not that far really. I haven't done any of the cutting yet, and there's still, I mean, that's not even halfway through the chart, I don't think. And basically this is the project that convinced me that I don't like hardanger in pearl 5 cottons on 22 count hardanger. It's just not fine and delicate enough for my tastes, and I was having a bit of a problem in the chart. This is a big fold out chart, but it only shows half of the design, well, slightly over half of the design, which I didn't realise, and then you mirror it on the centre point. So I'd clocked on that it showed half the design and you needed to mirror it, but I thought you mirrored the whole thing, and you don't. There's an overlap that they provide, but I didn't know that. So I had such a nightmare, because I'd stitch it and mirror it and think, that just doesn't look right, and rip it out and restitch it, and I don't know how many times I had to redo that top zigzag, because that's where I started. I started with the pearl cottons doing the zigzag design. And not only that, but there's not the same number of stitches in each zig and zag. So yeah, I got quite frustrated with it. Don't really like the 22 count hardanger, but I do want to finish it, because I want to experiment with those metallics for the filling stitches. And I forget even what metallics I'm using. I think it's a Krynic number 8 braid by the looks of it. I might have to use something different when it comes to the filling stitches, because that's probably too thick, but yeah. So on the 24th of February, I started this design, which is a PDF download from the designer's website. So I'll see if I can insert a photo here. So this is African Beauty by Leslie Tier, who, if you remember from last video, I did one of the first projects that I kitted up with her was her beautiful Swing into Spring, and I'm a huge fan of Leslie Tier's. When it comes to the ladies, well, apart from the geishas, I'm not so sure about them, but often there's just something about the faces that just seems a bit more realistic than, say, the Joan Elliots and the others. Except for Mirabilia. Mirabilia's, I think, probably do some of the best faces out there. But yeah, here, let me show you where I've got to. So this is African Beauty on 28 Ivory Cashel by Zweigart. And as you can probably imagine from my story about looking for different patterns to commemorate my trip to Tanzania, this was one that was up there for it to commemorate the project. And we did go and visit a Maasai tribe on our safari. But I think I also just really liked the design. I mean, it's got butterflies, and butterflies are my favourite animal. Oh, they are an animal. My biology's not great. I forget the classifications, but insects are animals, aren't they? Anyway, and I love the colours. And how often do you see, most figures that you see in cross stitch are Caucasian. There's not so much variety. I mean, it's getting better, but there's not so much variety in the ethnicities of people that you see in the cross stitch designs. So I just really loved it. So as you can see, I've got to about her waist. So there's still a fair bit to go. And there's lots of metallic. I've substituted the metallics and used, there's a copper Krynic swirls in the sun that are the same coppers that are in the Circle of Friends. I think it's 152V, Krynic number 4. And then there's some golds swirls in the dress and her earring and her bracelet that I've substituted. I try and put records on my Instagram because I can't remember otherwise. So if you're interested in the substitutions I've made, they should be on my Instagram. Yes, it's DMC's. I think she's coming along really nicely. This next project is another PDF download, so I'll try and insert a picture here. And this is Pole Express by Madame Lafay. And I started this one on Christmas Day in 2016. It's 1/1 on 27 count Zweigart Linda in light Mocha. And my thinking was, so I was there on Christmas Day thinking, I never stitch anything for my brother. I mean, I've stitched a few things for my sister, and for my sister's son I stitched his birth sampler and I've done him a present. My mum, I've stitched loads of stuff. But my brother and my dad, I haven't really, not even just stitched, but I haven't really made them anything. So I was thinking, my brother's really into trains, and he has a little ornament tree that my mum bought him to have in his flat. And so I thought, I wonder if I can find a train ornament to do for him. And I came across this design, and I really liked it. I thought it's not too girly. I mean, except for maybe the fact that it's in a heart. I'm not sure what he'll think about that. But yeah, I thought it was sort of nice and appropriate for him. So I started it on Christmas Day, thinking I'd get a head start for this Christmas. And as you can see, I mean, I got pretty far. I made decent progress. It's my first ever 1/1 on even weave project. So, you know, it's quite a learning experience as well. But as you can see, I've not even got halfway, and I sort of stalled and got distracted by other things. And now it's the 1st of October, and I've not got that long to try and get it finished for him for Christmas. So yeah, maybe this is gonna be one more for next year. He won't mind, he doesn't know I'm doing it, so it's fine. And so the 1/1's been interesting. I tried using is it Vonner's? I think it's probably Vonna's 1/1 pin stitch, where you sort of just do a horizontal stitch and then carry on with your crosses. And it doesn't feel as secure as the pin stitch for 2/2, which I love, but it seems to have worked okay. So I don't know if I can get closer in. And I was a bit disappointed when I finished the train in the, I thought, I love vibrant colours, and on the pattern, the colours for the train, the reds, they'd seemed more red than burgundy. So I was a little bit disappointed, but actually looking at it now, you know, I think it's quite nice. And here's the mess of the back at the moment. I have no idea what's going on there. I assume there are a load of ends that I need to secure. But I probably pulled them through to the back so I could take a photo for Instagram without them all on the front. So my next project, which I started on the 22nd of October 2016, is another PDF download, and it's a free chart by Hardanger Carper Carr. And I'm almost finished with it, so rather than look for a photo, I'm just going to show you my WIP. It's fairly big if I lean back a bit. So this, as I say, is Hardanger Carper Carr, and it's a free tutorial on the website, and it's in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, but you can still make your way through it, figure it out, because there's so many wonderful photos and diagrams, and there's a full chart as well, that it's not difficult to follow along, even though it's in a different language, which is one of the things I love about needlework. It's universal, right? So it's on 27 count Zweigart Linda, which, as I think I've said before, is possibly my favourite fabric, although I'd love it if they did 100% cotton even weaves in higher counts. That would be my one wish. But yeah, so 27 count Linda in cream with DMC Blanc pearl cottons in number 8 and number 12 to do the cluster blocks and the filling stitches. And you can see all I have left is to carry on the Greek crosses all the way around the border. And I say all I have left because there are an awful lot of Greek crosses in this border. And it's pretty close to what was charted, what I've done. I've kept it the same. The only thing I changed was that for the border, what they suggest you do is you cut and then do the buttonhole edging at quite a high tension to get this really delicate lacy border. But I've not decided, as I said last time, I don't like doilies. So I've not really decided what I'm going to do with this, because if I cut it out, what am I going to do with it? Put it as a table runner? It's just not... Yeah, so I decided that I'd just do the straight up buttonhole stitches without cutting, because then I can make the decision as to whether I'm going to cut around the buttonhole stitching or not later. So I've shown this project on Instagram a lot, and I know it's a favourite of Goldfishy, because she gave me my first ever shout out before I even started doing Flosstube videos, when she mentioned this project on one of her videos. Thank you for my shout out. And then one of my favourite features of it, I think is so cute, are these buttonhole stitch flowers. I just thought they were really cute. I'd not seen that stitch before. And then it's quite fun because there's lots of stitches, filling stitches that I haven't done before. Like these, I think are called sunflower stitches. And these big ones, oh, maybe if I do that one. These big ones, they're all using partial Greek crosses to create this beautiful lacy effect. And then you've got the chain stitching Smyrna crosses and normal crosses and all these satin stitch motifs. It's just, she's a really, really talented hardanger designer, and there's at least, well, there's several more of her projects that I'd love to do, but I decided to do this one because her projects are a bit more on the advanced side, and so I wanted to try a free one to make sure that I was actually capable of tackling one of her designs. And yeah, it's gone well. There's so many tutorials on how to do all the different stitches, and the designs that you purchase, they're available in English and Spanish. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the time when I finish this one, so then I can justify going and buying one of her actual charts and stitching one of those. So this is my next project, DMC Fantasia Damsel and Unicorn, which I started on the 22nd of September as part of a stitch along with Aussie Stitch on Instagram. And this makes me laugh every time because Rosie and I just seem to massively enable each other. I mean, Rosie's a huge enabler anyway. And I saw her, she'd found this chart. There's a series of several, I think there's 3. And I saw she posted that she'd bought this chart and the others. And I saw it and I went, oh, I have to go and look for that. So I went and I hunted. So I used all of my Google skills to find these because they're out of print and have been for quite a long time, I think. And I found the 3 of them for a really reasonable price. And so I snapped them up. And I said to Rosie, oh, I've got them. And so we decided to do a stitch along. And this is where I got to. So this is probably going to be the world's slowest stitch along, because I know Rosie has moved on to other things. And I made so much progress before I put it down to pick up something else. But Rosie was really clever because she started with the lady. So she started with the interesting part of the design, whereas I like to work from the top down. So I started with these trees, and yeah. But I do really like it. I need to get back around to it, but I've got so many different projects. There we go. That's what it's going to look like eventually when I finish it. Oh, and it's 32 count Murano by Zweigart, and I think it's the colour blue-grey. So this project is Lovers. The original artwork is by Jean-Baptiste Monge, and it's charted by Lena Lawson Needle Arts. And this artwork has been charted and kitted also by Nimue, which I think many people have seen and stitched. But I came across Lena Lawson Needle Arts and her charting. She's done a lot of his and other sort of fantasy artist artwork in a similar style, and it's just, wow, beautiful. So this is what it will look like when it's finished. It's a lovely scene of 2 fairy lovers sitting on their toadstools looking at the moon. It's so cute. I love the cricket on his head. I actually bought a second chart by Lena Lawson Needle Arts of a Jean-Baptiste Monge piece of artwork at the same time as I got this one. And it's The Musicians, which I don't have on hand to show you, but I absolutely love. Having said earlier about how I did a lot of music, I used to play bass guitar and saxophone in a jazz orchestra. And this design, it's a guitar with gnomes kind of being a bit rock and roll with it and distorting it. This, The Lovers, I started on the 27th of August of last year. So we're over a year now. And I put in a lot of work on this actually the end of last month. So the end of August, the beginning of September. And I made great progress. So I absolutely loved it when I started it, and I do still love it. But it's taking me so long for 2 reasons. One is I got so frustrated when I was doing the moon. and you can see that I've not done much of it. It comes around, there's an awful lot still left of the moon to go. But there are so many symbols in this chart. So these are the floss cards that I've made for the threads in this chart, and they're in a bit of a mess because I've been using them. But there's not one card, not two, not three, not four, but 5 cards full of symbols. So each card is 15 colours, and there's only 3 missing from the 5th card. So there are a lot of symbols, and most of those are blended threads. The other thing, and this has particularly happened in the moon, is that sometimes they're not that clever about the symbols that they choose to put close to each other in the chart. So in the moon, which is all shades of creams and sort of beiges and those kind of shades, they use a bracket and a crescent moon. So the only difference is one is slightly thicker than the other, and they use them both in the moon for very similar colours, very similar shades. And I had no idea. I'd stitched all of this much of the moon, picking the wrong one. So I think it was instead of the bracket, I'd picked the shade for the crescent moon, until I got down to here and realised that there was both the bracket and the crescent moon in the moon. And I had to unpick all of the brackets in the moon, which I'd stitched with the colour of the crescent moon, restitch them with the actual colour for the bracket, to then be able to carry on and use both the correct shades for both the bracket and the crescent moon in the moon. Are you confused yet? Because I mean, I was so annoyed when that happened, that this project got put away. I just didn't want to look at it. And it was only in August that I plucked up the enthusiasm to pick it back up again, even though I love the artwork so much. So there's a couple of unusual things in this, in how Lena Lawson Needle Arts chart their designs. So I don't know if you can see in the wings, you have half stitches that go, these go bottom left to top right, and then here you've got half stitches that are going top left to bottom right, so in the other direction. And those on the chart appear as 2 symbols within one square on the diagonal corners that represent the direction that you need to go in. So if you need to go from bottom left to top right, you'll have the same symbol in the bottom left corner and the top right corner. And if you need to go from top left to bottom right, you'll have the same symbol in the top left corner and the bottom right corner. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it also makes it quite difficult to count on the chart. And then the other thing is that there's quite a few areas where, to get additional detail, you have 2/1 full crosses. So for example, in the cricket, there's all around his head and his legs. You should be able to see, hopefully, that there's 2/1 quarter, full crosses as quarter stitches. And that happens all throughout, just to get more detail, I think. But I'd not seen that before. So that was something new and interesting to try. So I've still got a fair way. See, I've got all the way down. I've finished most of the toadstools. I've got quite a bit of grass still to do. I've got to finish off the moon. And then there's a lot of back stitching that I've also got to do. So it's going to be a while before this one's finished. But it's looking great. And I'm kind of dreading, but also looking forward to the other one with the guitar. But not until I finish this one. So this next project I started work on the 27th of July 2016. And it's called Butterfly Fairies by Witchy Kit Designs. I'll insert a picture here because it's digital down. Now, I stumbled across Witchy Kit Designs because I was looking for a design of a phoenix to cross stitch, and they had one and it didn't really take my fancy, but I decided to have an explore of their website. And they're quite similar to Heids and the like, in that they take artwork and they convert the pixels into stitches, and their prices are incredible. I think it was £2 or £3 maybe for this chart. And I really, as I said before, butterflies are my favourite animal, assuming that they are actually an animal. So this is where I've got to so far. So as you can see, it's the outlines of the top 2 wings of one of the fairies. So not really that far, but I absolutely love the colours. I love the purples and the golds and the design, the yellows of the flame. And I decided at the time I really wanted to do some really big projects, like massive projects. And I'd not done one over one, so I didn't want to try that on this one. So I had to go for, and ended up getting, this huge cut of 27 count Zweigart Linda in black. And I'm doing it 2 over 2. So it's, I mean, it's going to be a blanket, maybe a bedspread or something. It's going to be so big. And it being that big caused me several problems, in that I don't have a frame big enough to work it on. But I do have these knockoff Q snaps that I got from Hobbycraft. But the problem with those, well, there's several problems with those. So the first is, can you see they've left these white marks on the fabric? So this was before I knew about stitching in the well. And I do that now on every project to basically protect the front of the design, so that any dirt, any grime, any marks from the frames all end up on the back of the design rather than on the front. And I do have a finish that's on black fabric that I can show you. The back has got so grubby and you can see those marks, and yet on the front you can't tell anything. It's been protected by being worked in the well. But I didn't know this, or I just didn't do it on the Q snaps on this project. And I also didn't put anything in between the fabric and the clamps of the frame. And I think that was a mistake, not only because I've now got these marks, but because the tension on the frame was rubbish. So I was finding it really not enjoyable to work on. And then the third thing is that I work with a floor stand, a Lowry floor stand, which has got a side clamp. And that works great with my normal frames because the sidebars are square in cross section. So they've got flat sides that the clamp can secure to, and that holds them really well. But on the Q snaps, because the sides are round, the frame will just flop in the stand, and I end up having to prop it up with my arm as I stitch, and it's just really not a comfortable way to work. So I've really got to find some way to work around, some solution that works for me to be able to make any more progress on this project, which is a real shame. I do not want to consign it to the UFO bin. I mean, if I did decide to write it off, then at least I've got all of this black fabric to use for other projects. But I don't want to. I really like the design, and even though it's going to end up ginormous, I really do want to finish it. So if anyone has got any solutions on how to remove the white marks that the frame has caused from the fabric, I haven't tried anything yet. So the first thing I'll try is just rinsing it in plain water, tap water, and see if that helps anything. But if anyone knows, has had this before and knows a way to get rid of those marks, please let me know. And if you've got any other suggestions, I think I'm going to have to make my own frame that's big enough for me to work on this with the Lowry stand. And I have got the big frame adapter for the Lowry, which I don't love, but it's still better than trying to use those knockoff Q snaps. So if you've been watching Flosstube for any length of time, you must have come across this design. It's Save the Stitches by Elizabeth Ormond of Blackwork Journey. And Oh, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous design. So I started it on the 11th of June 2016, and as you can see, I've done what's that, 1, 2, 3, put 4 blocks so far. So I didn't get very far really. There's 24 blocks in total, and I've gone through all the called for materials. So the Silvery Moon 25 count Lugana, I think it's called Silvery Moon, and the black pearl cottons, and I'm using the DMC metallics, but the ones that come on the spools as opposed to the ones that come in skeins. And I guess what drew me to this is that I remember, apart from seeing everyone else's beautiful projects and all the alterations that they did to the colours, and there's just some lovely work out there and lovely renditions of this design. But I wanted to keep it really close to the original and the traditional, because in school we used to study the Elizabethans and the Tudors, and I remember going on a trip at school. We went to an old Tudor house, and we got dressed up in the costumes, and we had a banquet, and we lived for a few days the life of a well-to-do Tudor or Elizabethan person. And this design is just so reminiscent of those times. So every one of these blocks is filled with a different filling stitch, and yet they all have variations that allow you to show the range of light to dark. And you can just imagine how many different ways there would be to portray the same image, the same shading. And me loving learning new stitches, it's a delightful piece to have a record of all of these different stitches, and I really, really, really must get back to it. And the reason that I stopped working on it was because I was needing to use my largest frame, and I hadn't quite got the hang of working on a project that big at that point. It was the first time I'd used that size of frame, and so figuring it all out, getting used to it. Now that I've had more practice with it, I'm comfortable with working on projects that are that wide. So I have every intention of getting back to this, but I just have so many beautiful things that I want to stitch, and I've got to choose from, that it just needs to patiently wait its turn for a little longer. But I can't wait to see it when it's finished. I mean, I started putting in the metallics on this first block. So you've got the copper, gold and silver. I think there's silver in there. Silver down there. But I didn't put them, I was wanting to work on the filling stitches. So I just decided to work several blocks in the black and then come back and add in the metallics later. So when the metallic highlights are added, and then there's beading as well. I mean, just look, there's such depth. You can imagine it. I'm absolutely blown away when I see blackwork pieces that people have done that look photorealistic almost, or certainly like pencil sketches, with all the depth of the shading. I don't know why I haven't worked on this more. And if anyone else hasn't already seen it and doesn't know, this is actually a free design that's available on the Blackwork Journey website. And you could always choose to do fewer blocks than the 24 if you wanted to give some blackwork a go. Alternatively, they have other free designs that are introductions to blackwork and other similar techniques. I think there's Box of Delights and Pandora's Box, to name just two. And I can't recommend them highly enough. So this next design is another design that I was enabled partly by Flosstube to do, because I heard people talking on Flosstube about those big Chinese kits that you can get where the designs are printed on the fabric and you get the thread and you stitch over the design on the fabric, but you also get a chart, and then you wash the project and all the ink that's printed on the fabric disappears and you're just left with the stitching. But some of these come where they have partially printed backgrounds, so the printed background remains. And so I went looking and I found this one on eBay. And so I do like my series that have seasons or other, you know, series on a theme. And I really liked this one that has the tree broken into 4, which could represent the seasons, although it's not obvious necessarily which seasons would be which. I mean, perhaps it could be summer, autumn, winter, spring. Again, I don't really seem to check the sizes of things before I buy them. This is done on 11 count aida and it's humongous. It just keeps going. So you can see over here, because I've only worked on the first panel, so these last 3 panels, you can get the idea of how the chart is printed. So all of these circles would be stitched, and each square's got the symbol of the colour that should be stitched on that square. But then, for example, in this panel, the sort of teal is the background. So when the project gets washed at the end, all of this symbol printing should disappear and all of the background colour should remain, so that you end up with the design as shown in the picture. This is another one. I've only worked a little bit on the first panel. And I have to work on it sideways because that's the only way to fit it in a frame. And you can see that I've stitched these circles, whereas as I get towards these ones at the bottom, I haven't yet stitched any of those. And I do really like it. I mean, it's a bit of a challenge because it's 11 count, you use 3 strands, so you get absolutely huge quantities of thread provided. And it's fairly nice to work with. I haven't had any issues with it. And getting the strands to lay neatly hasn't been a problem. I have a laying tool that I use. But I think, and this possibly speaks to why I don't enjoy the stamp design so much, that I find it difficult to motivate myself to work on it because it's just so difficult to see at a glance the progress that you're making, because the bit that you're about to stitch is all coloured in, and then the bit that you've already stitched is coloured in, and it's difficult to see the difference. Unlike when you're doing a counter design, you start off with nothing, you can really easily see the progress that you're making. But I do like it. I have no idea what I'll do with it when I finished it, but I'm so intrigued by the wash it and the printing will disappear concept that I really do want to finish it. So it's definitely not going to be added to the UFO pile, but it might be some time before I finish it. So last video I talked about this project. It's the Zolotoe Runo charting of the Aframoth. They call it Romantic Walk, but I think actually it's called something different. The official artwork, the official name. And I spoke about how this got me back into stitching in combination with discovering the parking method tutorials on Flosstube. And I started this in January 2015, as soon as I got it home from the craft show that I went to with some friends. And as you can see, it's nearly complete. I've just got this half page here left to complete, and also to fill in. There's a few gaps on this page where I've run out of a colour of thread, and I'm hoping that that's the only one I run out of, and I've got just enough left to be able to do a colour match, so I can use some DMC that's close enough in colour and just fill in those gaps, and I'm sure it won't make any difference. And this is the packaging, so you can see that there's really not much left. I'm almost there. But as I was explaining in that previous video, I hit a wall with this. Before I learnt the parking method, I was getting in such a tangle with all of the colour changes, and I was finding it really difficult to battle through and make progress with it. But when I'd seen this kit and discovered Afromov and his artwork, I immediately went and looked to see if Zolotoe Runo had any more kits by him. And when I was struggling with this one, I thought in my infinite wisdom, well, if this one's a bit hard, maybe I should just start another one, a different one, and work on that for a bit, and that'll give me a bit of a break, and then I can come back. And so I started working on this design, again by Zolotoe Runo. It's artwork by Afromov, and they call it Dance of Love. That's not the official name of the artwork, I forget what that is. And let me just show you how far I got. So as you can see, I didn't get very far at all. I realised rather quickly that this wasn't the solution to my problem, and that actually I needed to work on my technique and find a different way to handle all of the colour changes, which parking row by row has completely solved for me. So this I started, I think, in March 2016. I didn't take very good records, even that recently. But there we are. I've made a start. I have to say that the face of the male dancer does freak me out a little bit though. It's kind of featureless. I'm hoping this will focus. His face is a bit, I don't know, it's not so bad actually as I look at it now, but it did have me a bit disturbed when I first looked at it. But I checked out the original artwork, and it's very close to how the face is in the original artwork. But I actually used to take salsa lessons, and whilst that's not ballroom dancing, strictly speaking, it's a nice little... at the university, I went to the University of Birmingham, and I was part of some societies, and one of the societies that I really wanted to join was the Ballroom Dancing Society, and I wanted to get lessons, and this was before Strictly became a thing on telly, I think, or at least I was really into it. But it clashed with my timetable of lectures and the assignments and the deadlines and all of that, so I did go once or twice, but I didn't manage to learn ballroom in its entirety. But at least I can say that I've done one of the dances. So I don't imagine that I'll pick this up again until after I've finished Romantic Walk. But I would like to finish it, and I've also got several more Afromov patterns from Zolotoe Runo. They have a huge range of them. I know there are other people that chart his artwork as well, because it's beautiful. So we're coming close to the end now, and I've got one more WIP to show you, and that is strictly speaking my oldest WIP, but as you'll see I've restarted it, so it's a bit ambiguous as to exactly what order it should have come in, but here we are, I'll show you. It's this, which is Sakura from Maia, and she's one of two geishas, the same series from Maia. I also have her sister design, Misaki, and they're absolutely beautiful. But I started on Sakura first, and I originally started her here on this fabric that came in the kit, which is 16 count, I believe, 16 count red Aida, and I got all the way through. Oh, let me just get rid of that. I got all the way through the half stitch background and started moving on to her head and her dress and the beginning of her fan, and came across all the fractional stitches which I hadn't encountered so far in the design. And I think I started this in around 2008. I don't have an exact date. And the fractionals on the Aida I found really difficult. And I think partly that's because, as I mentioned with the RTO Mermaid, the instructions specify to do the 3/4 stitches with the long stitch, the half stitch first, with the 1/4 stitch over the top, and to do one of those in each quarter, and I'd never come across that before. That, in combination with the Aida, made me really struggle, and so I put it aside. And so what I decided I would do, once I discovered how much I enjoyed working on even weaves, was to restart it on even weave, but finding an even weave that would match in colour, because the fabric colour forms part of the design. As you can see here, this red is actually negative space in and around the cherry blossoms, are they? So I wanted to find a red even weave that matched as closely as possible to the Aida in the kit, and I found this. It's 28 count Christmas red Jaslyn. Now, I'd never worked on Jaslyn before, but I'd worked on Murano, Lugana and Linda, and so I thought, yeah, that'll work, that'll be great. So I got the Jaslyn, and I started off doing the half stitch border background again, and I decided that I needed to use 3 strands rather than 2 as on the 16 count, because the coverage just wasn't good enough. But I started just doing it in a continental tent stitch style, because I'd seen everyone's videos where they said that will help prevent the distortion of the fabric, the skewing. But I don't know if it's because this is Jaslyn and it's really got a lot of drape, it's got a lot of body, it doesn't hold its structure very well. It's so easy to stretch it and distort it, that even with the continental tent stitch, just with a small amount, it had started distorting the fabric, so it was a parallelogram rather than a square. And I thought, there is so much half stitch in this design, I just can't do that. It's going to be a nightmare at the end. It's not going to look anything like what it's supposed to, especially in contrast with the full cross area at the centre of the design. So what I did was I decided to try and do the background in basket weave, and that works absolutely great for maintaining the squareness of your fabric. You don't get any of the same distortion, sort of pull along the bias, that the continental tent stitch gives you, but it's a lot trickier to work each diagonal block in the chart. I'm so not used to working like that it was just hard going, and I hadn't got a scan of the chart to do the highlighting on, and my paper copy was getting a bit tatty. So rather than get frustrated with it, I put it down. I just wanted to show you that this is what basket weave looks like on the back, if you forgive the waist knots that I haven't secured already, cut off and secured the ends. You can see you get the sort of basket weave structure on the back of the fabric, but it's really difficult, as I say, to follow along with the chart, trying to focus on just one square at a time and going in a diagonal. But I do, again, I'm in a bit of a quandary as to what to do. Do I try and go back to the Aida and just push through with the fractionals. But the thing is, my stitching's, I mean, it's almost 10 years old. My stitching, my tension and all of that has changed so much that it's just going to look strange against what's already there. And the difficulty with the fractionals isn't going to go away. Like, I did try working on the Aida again when I had the issues with the Jaslyn and the distortion, and I just didn't enjoy it, so I didn't want to work on it. So I guess I'm just going to have to decide one way or the other and tough it out. Either get better at reading the chart for basket weave, or tough it out with the fractionals on the Aida. But I really love these designs. They're amazing. And even with all of that, not only do I want to finish Sakura, but I do really want to get onto Misaki as well. So I'm gonna have to figure it out somehow. So as I said, Sakura was my last WIP to show you. But I do have one more thing to show you, and it's what I consider to be my only UFO. I have lots of small little free gifts from the front of magazines, as I said last video, that I'd start and never finish, but they're from so long ago and they're so small that they just don't really count, at least in my mind. I couldn't keep track of them, there were so many. But I do have one project that's a fairly decent size that I've started, and I just don't currently have any will to finish whatsoever. And that is this Country Girl by DMC. Now, when I was at university, I lived, our house basically looked over the car park of an Aldi supermarket. And Aldi is one of these supermarkets that they buy seemingly random items in bulk and then sell them at a crazy low price. So you can never be sure what they're going to be selling from one week to the next. But you can get some amazing bargains if you keep an eye on what they're selling. And one week I went in to do my grocery shopping or something. Probably to buy ingredients to bake cakes, because I baked so many cakes at uni. It was a bit of an obsession, and my housemates even had an intervention at one point. But anyway, I went into this Aldi that I lived right next to, and I saw this, and it's the only time I'd seen cross stitch in there, and I thought, well, great, I'm going to have to get it. It's such a good price. And it also puts me in mind, I'm not sure, because I'm not up on the sort of proper historical costumes, what their the periods are, and also the regional variations. But it does put me in mind of a sort of somewhere between a Charlotte Bronte and a Jane Eyre, and Jane Austen and perhaps Pride and Prejudice or something. Just that kind of, historic girl in the countryside. I mean, I'm sure it's not accurate, but anyway, that's the chart. And this is how far I got. So as you can see, I did all of the background at the top here up until the window, and then I obviously got bored and I decided I wanted to move on to the girl in her costume. But I was doing a sort of extreme cross-country type style. That's how I stitched at that point. So this is probably again back in 2008, something along those lines. And I made an absolute mess of the chart because I put it down for so long. I decided to try and pick it up again quite some time ago. And so I just started trying to highlight in the bits that I had already done, and then fill in some more bits and highlight, and the chart's just falling apart, highlighting everywhere, and I that's not how I like to work anymore. And I don't know, I don't feel the desire to work on it. Now, I haven't given it away or sold it, or it's not completely relegated to the bin, because I don't know, something inside me finds the idea of actually throwing all of that work in the bin abhorrent. But it's, as I say, it's not up there on my list of, I'm not bothered about it at all, really. I don't really even think about it. But I'm keeping it just on the off chance that one day I do decide, yeah, I'd really like to finish that actually. Then it'd be a shame to waste all of this work that I've already done. So there we have it. Those are all of my WIPs and my one UFO, or at least the only one that I'm counting. If you have any suggestions for the problems that I've asked about during the video, so that was the Krennic number 8 braid in Deco Spirits, and the white marks on the black fabric with butterfly fairies, plus any of the others that I've forgotten about, please, 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 please do leave a comment. I'd appreciate it so much. But to everybody, thank you so much for watching me. Thank you again for your kind welcome to the Flosstube community. I hope to carry on making these videos as long as you guys keep on enjoying them. And I have a couple of ideas for some different tutorials. So if you would be interested in any of those, please let me know. And I'll see if I can put something together. So until next time, bye.